Okay, I wanted to continue. We started last time a little bit the Kavanos of Pesach. The main idea of giving this over, as you know, Ari'Zal had Mipi Eliyahu Hanavi, all the Kavanos that we're supposed to have. We should try to emulate them. But even if we can't, because we didn't learn it long enough, or whatever the case may be, we don't understand it fully, the point is that we should know and have an awareness that everything we do, a whole year, whether it be in our learning, in our mitzvahs, and everything when we go to work, whatever it is that we're doing, that we should have an awareness that everything has a deeper meaning and deeper understanding, and everything is coming from the Ribbono Shel Olam, and that every second of every day is a new din. And you see yourself, every breath you take is a new acknowledgement that Kodesh Baruch Hu gave you chiyas, right? As you know, a person could die at any moment. Life is not guaranteed, right? So therefore you have to basically be thanking the Ribbono Shel Olam for every breath you take. We don't appreciate it because we take it for granted, especially when we're young. We think we're all invincible, right? But l'maisa, none of us are invincible. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about Pesach. We spoke last time about Pesach. We said that the main nes of Pesach is that normally when a person grows up, they start off with basically brainless, right? And then as time goes by, right, like the Mishnah tells us, they go through stages. There's Ibur, they're born, then there's Yenika, and then there's, and when you're five years old, you learn Chumash, and when you're 10 years old, you learn Mishnayos, and when you're 13 years old, that's when you first get your first level, what we call Gadlus, which is Moichin, which is in English brains, right? And then obviously there's different levels on brains. Some people are smarter, some people are not as smart, some people work on it. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about Kiddush, okay? In Kiddush, we spoke about this before, why do we make Kiddush? It comes Shkia, let's say every Shabbos, comes Shkia, right? Are you allowed to continue driving your car or do any melacha? Absolutely not. Shabbos comes by itself. What are you doing by Kiddush? You're being Mekadosh the Yom. Why being Mekadosh the Yom? It's already Kiddush. What did you accomplish? Answer is that since each one of us is an olam by itself, you just said it before, right? We are an olam. So there's a Kiddush for the whole world. Shabbos is for the whole world. Whether you keep it or you don't keep it, the Shabbos is here. When you are being Mekadosh the Shabbos and you say, Baruch Atah Hashem, Mekadosh HaShabbos, or Mekadosh Yisrael V'Azmanim, I'm being Mekadosh it for my world, which means me. And that is a madrega on its own. Now, in Kavanos, there are different levels, and we try to be mechaven to different names that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has. When we talk about names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it doesn't mean the name of you're identified by your name. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by him, we have no understanding whatsoever. Everything that we have from HaKadosh Baruch Hu is al pi hanhagaisav u'pu'ulaisav. He gave us certain presents. The biggest present he gave us was Osiyas HaTorah, Aleph Beis. Unlike any other language, any other alphabet in the whole entire Aleph Beis, in the whole entire world, I should say, that there's the Aleph Beis itself is what's called Amuk Mi'ayt. It's the deepest thing in the world. And every letter and every Nakuda, and there's so many madregas, which maybe I'll make a series of it to go through it, because there's so much there and so many levels. Just to give you one tiny mashal, okay? Take Ois Aleph. How do you sound Aleph? Right? Nothing exciting there. Now take Aleph itself, what does it mean? If you take the word Aleph, it means number one, right? If now take those same letters, right, and there's no arguments how you spell the letter Aleph. The other letters, there are different sheets how they're spelled, but the word Aleph. Now it could be Aleph, it could also be Aleph. How, from Aleph to Aleph, how does Aleph become Aleph? Simply, what's the last letter in the Aleph Beis? Taf. What number is that? 400. Then we have what we call the ender letters, right? Which is the Manspach, Mem, Nun, Tzadik, Pei, Chaf, right? So letter Chaf is after 400 comes 500. Letter Mem, 600. Letter Nun, 700. Letter Pei, 800. Letter Tzadik, 900. And then you go back to Elef, which is 1,000. And that in Sefer Yetzirah, it's called Noz Soifan B'tchilasan. Right? The end is the beginning. That represents, in other words, the same Aleph that you started with is the same one you end with, from Aleph to Elef. And you see in that element of Ein Sof. The Kudsha Brichu is ongoing, on and on and on, never ends. Right? When we started learning, we spoke about Olam HaIgulim. Olam HaIgulim means there's no beginning, no end, and that's how we understand Rabbanu Shalom. We don't know, there's nothing before and there's nothing after. We have basically no musig in it. Getting carried away a little bit because we're not really getting into Pesach, but I'm using this as a basic acknowledgement that when you start now you have an idea what a ice means. Now in Hashem's name, the central name we use for Hashem is Yud Kei Vav Kei. And as everybody here knows, that there are different, interpretations of, it means Haya Haiva V'yiyeh in a taich form, but in a numerical taich it has different, because there's different ways of writing it out. The Yud is always Yud Vav Dalet. The Hey could be, as we know, Hey Yud, Hey Hey, or Hey Aleph. Like you say, Yehei Shmei Rabbah, those are the three letters that could be added to the Hey, and the Vav can also be changed from a Vav Yud Vav to a Vav Aleph Vav. And it's called, those who are familiar, it's Absag Ma Ben, which I'm not going into the detail, but just to show you that there are 4 different levels, and in each level it has, you have Ab Shaba'ab, you have Sag Shaba'ab, and you have Ma Shaba'ab and Ben Shaba'ab. You have every level has a million different levels in it because they keep on going on and on and on. Kavanos for Kiddush, right? Kiddush is the first thing that we're doing, right? The thing is that Kiddush, how do you make Kiddush? You make it with a cup of wine, right? What's the gematria of the word kais? 86. What's the gematria of Shem Elikim? Also 86. Seemingly, it's a Midas Hadin, right? So what do we do with a Midas Hadin? We have to sweeten the din. How do we sweeten the din? And that the Ari'Zal explains to us there are different ways of sweetening the din. You have Dalit Kaises, and you're going to have, over here we have many different levels, because we have different levels of what we call Meichin coming into a person. One is a level of Meichin from when a person is born until the Bar Mitzvah. That's called Katnas Rishon. There's another level called, which goes from Bar Mitzvah to age 20, which is called Katnas Sheni. The day of Bar Mitzvah is called Katnas Rishon, and then from 20 and on is called Gadlus Sheni. Those are for, each one has a different kavanah in the name when you make Kiddush. So there are 4 kaises, right? And each one of those 4, as a kais rishon, has 4 levels. And just to give you an example, so in the first part is going to be Hashem's name, all spelled out with the Yud in it. Okay? That's going to be the Havaya. But there's also, you have the cup, is also part. The cup here is called the Lavush, because you have the Kavanah in the mind, but then you have the physical part, which is a Lavush, like a clothing, right? No, we don't wear, typically, besides the yarmulke, we don't wear clothing on our heads, right? But anything, in order to access it, has to have what we call a Lavush, like a cloth, right? And the kais for the Kiddush is acting like a cloth, like a Lavush it's called, and that shame that goes with the Lavush is shame Eke, Aleph, K, Yud, K, and the shame Eke, we're spelling it now just like we had 3 different ways with the Shem Havaya, that the Hey could be spelled out 3 different ways, so too with the Eke. And you also have the Shem Elikim, which I just mentioned. So the Shem Elikim could be sweetened many different ways. Now, I'm just going to mention one way, which we didn't mention until now, and this is the Ari'Zal, and even in that, there's 3 different ways. Now, if you take the name Elikim, and you want to move everything closer to the beginning, what's closer to the beginning? Closer to the beginning is you move it over 1 ice, closer to the beginning of the Aleph base. So the Shem Elikim, how do you spell it? Aleph, Lamed, Hey, Yud, Mem, right? So the Aleph, you want to move it closer to the beginning, you can't. So the Aleph stays the same. You want to take the Lamed, you're going to move it over 1, becomes a Chaf. You want to take the Hey, becomes a Tes, right? Dalet, sorry. You want to take the Yud, becomes a Tes. So those 3 ices, Chaf, Dalet, Tes, are switched. What about the Mem and the end? Right? So the Mem at the end, you move it back one, from an end of Mem to a regular Mem. Problem is, it's the end of a word. End of a word has to go back to end of Mem. So therefore it stays at end of Mem. Right? So now, it's called Hamtaka of the Shem Elikim. You sweeten the name Elikim by moving it back, each one as much as you can, 1 ice. You see in the Pasuk, it says, Vayakov Vayikra Shem Hamokem Ahu Gal Eid. What is the Gal Eid telling us? Gal Eid is telling us that those 3 middle letters, Chaf, Dalet, Tes, is Gematria 33, which is also a remez for Lag BaOmer, is the one day that we don't have a Midas Hadin Shailet. And in addition to that, we have the Aleph and the Mem, right? So you have the Lamed Gimel plus the Aleph and the Mem, which is 41, and together they are Gematria Ayin Dalet, right? That's called a Hamtaka, and that's why Yaakov called that place Gal Eid. The middle letters was just the Hamtaka, those 3, which is called Gal, which is the 33, and if you take the whole thing together, 74, that is a Hamtaka. So that is one of the Kavanos and one of the Shemas in the Kiddush. There's much, much more, which I didn't get to, which I could be here for an hour, and by the time I would get there, besides the people here that would fall asleep, the people listening to it would for sure fall asleep. But I'm saying it just as an awareness for everything that's going on a regular basis, and especially Leil Seder. There's so much happening there, which we don't see and we don't hear. And therefore, when we go into Leil Seder, we have to go in Be'ema, Be'yira, Bereses, V'zeya, and understand that we are doing Ratzon Hashem, even if we don't know all the Kavanos, but there's so much more. Therefore, if we mizalzel the Seder, and we talk about shtusim, and all the stupid things that happen in a person's life, which are not relevant to the Seder and the Kedushas Hayom, so not only are we ruining the atmosphere of the Seder, of the matzah balls, that they won't be so spongy, they'll be a little bit hard, or things like that, but we're ruining it, and you don't need matzah balls. Actually, now you do, because they're not gebruks anymore. But I'm just saying, so that the Kedushas Hayom, there's so much there, even if we don't feel it, we have to know that it's there, and we should take that as his iris going forward. And I didn't even touch the first part of the Kiddush, so to be continued.
Good.